During the Spanish Reformation in the 16th century, a man known as El Greco, which means the Greek in Spanish, became well known for his artwork. El Greco was born in October of 1541 as Dominikos Theotokopoulos, grew up on the island Crete in Greece. His father and older brother were very successful merchants, and his father was also a tax collector, making this urban family very prosperous to begin with. He took a liking to art at a very young age and was trained as an icon painter. The artist stayed in Greece until his late 20s and then moved to Venice, Italy in 1567. In Venice, he ended up learning a lot from the artists there that helped him improve in his art, making it more mature. When he got to Venice, it was his goal to master an art form that encompassed Renaissance painting. He wanted his work to have a perspective where he could create work that would have elaborate narratives. Eventually, El Greco left Venice in hopes of gaining royal patronage from King Philip in Madrid, Spain. It didn't go as he planned, so he stayed in Toledo, Spain, where most of his artwork came from. He stayed here for the remainder of his life, but not without making an impact on people's daily lives of the early modern world through his painting, sculpting, and architecture. Greco worked on perspective painting, figural construction, also known as painting the anatomy of the human body, and made his paintings have more of a narrative and be able to explain the feelings he had just through his brush. Greco never forgot his heritage, so whenever he signed his names on painting, it would be signed in Greek. Once El Greco moved to Toledo, he got the recognition that a painter should have received. One of his first works was Espolio, or the Disrobing of Christ. It was a scene that showed Christ being disrobed and being prepared for his crucifixion. The next one is called The Burial of Count of Orgaz. This was mainly to get the eye of King Philip, so he would be the one of the royal painters, as we would call him today. Another work we have by El Greco is called View of Toledo. This painting is specifically a special one because it's one of the 3 remaining landscape paintings recovered from El Greco, and it was very rare to do so in the Spanish Renaissance, and it is also compared to Vincent van Gogh's Starry Night. Look into El Greco's sculptures. They weren't as magnificent or well-known like David by Michelangelo. El Greco often used clay and plaster to make his figures. The figures he made would be used as a reference to make his altarpieces, figure drawings, and paintings, a practice witnessed in Jacopo Tintoretto's studio. If commissioned, he would create sculptures that other contractors would use to make artwork for churches such as the Saint Ildefonso or Sacristy of Toledo Church. His 2 well-known sculptures were made in Toledo called The Rising Christ and 2 Saints. Looking into El Greco's work associated with architecture, it seems as he was really much more interested in religious aspects. His work as an architect is not known as much as his paintings and sculptures because they don't show much compassion to what he really set out to in his mind. However, he still made marvelous architecture designs that have impacted his art style much more after his death of 1614, iconically referring to the 20th century. His style of architecture he focused more to was connected with Venetian Renaissance. One example is he would place paintings in deep space to emphasize the architecture with the paintings of the room. One thing El Greco incorporated into his sculpture was his descent on being Greek but living and creating his work in Toledo, Spain. That made his work pop out and catch one's eye because it was different and then again fitted to the Renaissance era at the time. Even though El Greco's most fascinating work comes from Toledo, Spain, much more architecture structures he designed are largely appreciated and loved from all around the area. Before the end of his life, El Greco made an impact on the daily lives of the people of the early modern world. People were influenced and amused with his artwork created as a painter, a sculptor, and an architect. Sadly, he became extremely ill when working on a commission for the Hospital Tavera. He died about a month later in April of 1614, but not before giving his son, Jorge Manuel, who was also his successor, the power to make his will for him. He was buried in the church of Santo Domingo el Antigua. Even though he is long gone, the iconic Greek artist is still very popular to this day, with only his artwork left to look back on.